coffee wasn't hot enough. The brand was wrong. My outfit, according to James, looked like I was trying too hard. Then came the words that finally cracked the silence inside me. "You'll never be good enough for someone like me." He said it casually, like he was doing me a favor by being honest. I stared at him, standing across our granite kitchen island in his designer shirt, hair perfectly combed, face smug with superiority. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't ask why. I picked up my keys and walked out the door without looking back. He called after me, confused. "Rachel, don't be dramatic. I'm just trying to help you. Improve." Like I was a fixer-upper he'd grown tired of. "My name is Rachel. I'm 34, a marketing coordinator, and for 6 years, I believed love meant criticism disguised as care. But one sentence, stay with me to see how I transformed a belittled housewife into a powerful executive, while my husband's life unraveled at the seams." Rachel met James during their second year of grad school. She was studying marketing, fueled by ambition and creativity, already dreaming of running her own campaigns and climbing the corporate ladder. James was in law school, charming, well-dressed, and oozing confidence. He had an air of sophistication that turned heads and a way of speaking that made his opinions sound like facts. From their first date, Rachel felt flattered by his attention. He praised her intelligence, then gently suggested she tone down her wardrobe. "You don't need to try so hard," he'd say with a smile. "You're beautiful when you're subtle." It felt like care at the time. Over the months, Rachel found herself changing. Not all at once, just little things. She started wearing more neutral tones. She stopped wearing bold lipstick. When he raised an eyebrow at her friend Sarah's boisterous laugh, Rachel began making excuses not to see her. James said her friends were loud, unrefined, and a bad influence on her future as a respectable woman. Slowly, Rachel's world narrowed. The vibrant people she once loved were replaced with his firm's dinner parties and curated conversations. James didn't stop there. When Rachel received early offers for leadership tracks at work, James dismissed them. "That's a lot of pressure for someone who values stability," he'd say. "You're amazing where you are. Why risk that?" At first it sounded like encouragement, but over time Rachel realized she was the only one compromising. By their third year of marriage, Rachel had passed on 2 promotions. She managed James's social calendar, played the smiling wife at firm events, and hosted meticulously planned dinners. She ironed his shirts, coordinated his ties with her dresses, and practiced smiling just the right amount. James, for his part, critiqued her cooking, her posture, and even how she introduced herself. "Just say marketing," he'd whisper. "No need to go into the details. Keep it simple, classy." Rachel stopped sharing ideas at work meetings. She second-guessed her instincts. She doubted her worth. James had never raised his voice or slammed a door, but his disapproval came wrapped in suggestions. His control was polite, his belittling framed as love. She couldn't pinpoint the moment she stopped being herself. Only that one day, she realized she no longer recognized the woman in the mirror. Despite everything, Rachel still held on to hope. On the eve of their 6th anniversary, she worked on a photo album, a gift meant to remind them both of better days. Each page held memories of their early laughter, their shared travels, the dreams they once talked about. She thought if she could just remind him of those moments, maybe they could find their way back. Maybe the tension would ease, the criticisms would fade, and the man she fell in love with would reappear. She finished the album late that night, carefully wrapping it with a ribbon, heart aching but steady. It was her way of holding on. She had no idea the next morning would bring a sentence that would finally make her let go. The morning of their anniversary started like so many others, with criticism. Rachel had just poured James a cup of coffee when he took a sip, frowned, and said, "You bought the wrong brand again. Is it really that hard to remember?" She stood quietly across the kitchen island, taking in his pressed shirt, his smug expression, the same condescension he wore like cologne. The photo album, carefully wrapped and sitting beside his plate, remained untouched. "What's that?" he asked, nodding toward the ribboned package. She slid it across the counter. "Something I made for us, for our anniversary." James unwrapped it slowly, flipped through a few pages, then scoffed. "Pictures of us at the beach and those tacky restaurant dinners. Rachel, this is sweet but a little desperate, don't you think?" She didn't reply. Something in her snapped, but not loudly. No shouting, no tears. just a quiet calm that wrapped around her like armor. She picked up her keys and turned toward the door. "Where are you going?" he asked, more annoyed than curious. "Just going to the gym," she replied. Which was true. But this time she wasn't going because James had suggested she needed to tone up. She was going for herself. At the gym, Rachel signed up for a personal trainer, someone who didn't know her as James's wife or anyone's shadow. She told him she wanted to feel strong. She didn't say it, but it was the first time in years she'd made a decision based solely on what she wanted. Her body felt sore, alive, like a part of her that had been sleeping was finally waking up. That night, her phone buzzed with a message from James. "Don't forget what I learned this summer. Please wear something sophisticated this time. And do something with your hair." Rachel stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, looking forward to it. Let him think things were normal. Let him believe she'd show up in the dress he picked, her voice muted, her posture perfect. What he didn't know was that she'd already scheduled a consultation with a divorce lawyer for the next morning. The meeting was brief, efficient, and oddly empowering. The attorney confirmed what Rachel had hoped. Her income, though modest, was hers. The account she'd opened in her name would be protected. She left the office with a checklist in hand and a weight lifted off her chest. At home, James didn't notice a thing. He was too busy criticizing the eggs she made for dinner. "Overdone again," he muttered, as if her culinary skills were a personal failure. "I don't understand why you can't master something so simple." Rachel smiled faintly. "You're right. I guess I'll never be as perfect as your mother." He missed the sarcasm, too busy launching into another nostalgic story about his mother's legendary breakfast stills. She let him talk, but in her mind, she was already gone. The cracks weren't just showing, they were widening. And this time, she wasn't patching them up. She was planning her way out. Rachel didn't waste time. The morning after meeting with the divorce lawyer, she walked into her bank and opened a new account in her name only. Every paycheck from that moment forward went straight into it. No more joint access, no more pretending. It was the first financial decision she'd made without James since they got married, and it felt like oxygen. At work, something shifted. A marketing campaign that had been sitting on her desk for weeks, waiting for approval from someone else, now felt like her own to lead. She stayed late crafting a bold proposal, the kind James would call overreaching or unrealistic. But her boss didn't. "This is sharp, Rachel," she said, eyes scanning the deck. "I've been waiting for you to step forward like this. There's an opening for senior marketing director. You should apply." Rachel said yes without hesitation. That same evening, she heard from Sarah, her college roommate, the one James had labeled too opinionated and gradually pushed out of her life. "Drink soon," the message read. Rachel smiled. They met the next night. Sarah didn't ask what had changed, she just listened, and Rachel talked, really talked, for the first time in years. No filtering, no pretending. Sarah called her brave. Rachel wasn't sure she believed it yet, but hearing it helped. With Sarah's help, she found a new apartment across town. Bright, modern, filled with color and light. James would have hated it. Too feminine, too loud, too her. Which is exactly why she loved it. She signed the lease using only her name. The first piece of furniture she bought was a red couch, something bold, something James would have called tacky. She called it freedom. Rachel began moving her things slowly, piece by piece, while James was at work or out with clients. A few dresses here, some framed photos there. The photo album she'd made for their anniversary, she kept that too. Not because of the memories, but as a reminder of the last day she tried to make him happy. At night, while James rambled about office politics or criticized her for burning toast, Rachel quietly reviewed her checklist. She'd mapped out every step in their family legacy. She had an exit plan, a safe place to land, and a new beginning just waiting to start. The final task was preparing for the dinner with his law firm partners. She knew James expected her to wear the blue dress he'd chosen, the one that erased every trace of her personality. He'd texted a reminder. Dinner Thursday, blue dress. Fix your hair, please. Rachel texted back, of course. I want everything to be perfect. And she meant it. But not for the reasons he thought. This wasn't about keeping up appearances or earning his approval. It was about the final act, the last performance before she walked off his stage for good. Because this time, the woman James expected to control would be the one holding all the power. Thursday arrived like a curtain rising on the final act. Rachel stood in front of the boardroom screen at Maxwell & Brooks in a sleek red dress, her posture tall, her voice steady. Her presentation wasn't just about marketing. It was about transformation, vision, and leadership. As she clicked through slides, detailing a bold new strategy for the company's next fiscal year, she noticed heads nodding, pens scribbling, eyes widening with interest. When she finished, the room broke into applause. Outstanding work, Rachel, the CEO said, smiling as she closed her laptop. We've been waiting for this. The position is yours, if you want it. I do, Rachel replied, the words feeling like a promise to herself. She celebrated with Sarah over coffee and laughter, sharing the surreal high of reclaiming her life. Then, as the sun dipped low, she changed nothing about her appearance, no second guessing. She walked into the upscale restaurant where James's law firm dinner was being held, still wearing the red dress. James saw her before anyone else. His jaw tightened. What are you wearing? He hissed under his breath as she approached. I thought we agreed on the blue dress. No, Rachel replied, sliding effortlessly into her seat. You decided on the blue dress. I chose something that feels like me. One of the firm's senior partners leaned in. Is this your wife, James? Rachel, we've heard so much about you. James stiffened. Yes, this is Rachel. You look stunning, the partner's wife said warmly. What do you do, Rachel? Rachel smiled, unbothered by the way James's hand subtly tapped her leg beneath the table, his silent cue to stay modest. She ignored it. I just accepted a new position today, actually. Senior Marketing Director at Maxwell & Brooks. There was a beat of stunned silence, then murmurs of recognition. Maxwell & Brooks, one partner repeated. That's one of our biggest clients. Impressive, said another. They only promote the best. James looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. It's recent, he said hastily. I've always encouraged Rachel's modest ambitions. Another chuckle from the table. Modest? Rachel, I know 3 people who've been gunning for that role for years. The praise kept coming. Every compliment cracked the image James had cultivated, of Rachel as meek, small, a decorative wife. Now she was dazzling. Colleagues who barely glanced at her in past dinners were suddenly attentive, curious, engaged. James tried to pivot the conversation, but Rachel owned it. She spoke confidently about her campaign, the team she'd assembled, her plans for Q3. When someone asked how she found the courage to step into such a role, she said, I stopped waiting for permission. Turns out, the only thing holding me back was someone else's fear of my potential. James dropped his fork. Laughter rippled around the table. Later, over dessert, one partner's wife leaned across and said, You know, we always wondered why James downplayed you. Now I see why. You're the real powerhouse at this table. James sat stiffly, his usual smugness replaced by silent fury. Rachel lifted her glass and smiled. To fresh starts, and being exactly who we are. The table echoed the toast. James didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Everyone saw it. His control was gone. His narrative had shattered. And Rachel? She had never looked more powerful. James waited until the table was distracted by dessert before leaning toward Rachel, his voice low and tight. What do you think you're doing? He asked, through gritted teeth. That dress? That attitude? You're making a scene. Rachel didn't flinch. She sipped her water, and set her glass down with care. "Having dinner," she replied calmly. "Isn't that what you wanted?" James grabbed her arm under the table, his fingers tense. "You're embarrassing me," he said. "We agreed you'd wear the blue dress, and that you'd be appropriate," Rachel said, locking eyes with him. "You decided. I simply chose not to comply." His eyes darted around the room. "You're being dramatic. Is this because I snapped this morning? About the toast? Come on, Rachel. Don't do this here." She leaned in slightly, her voice quieter than before, but cutting through his performance like a scalpel. "The divorce papers are on your desk. I moved out last week." James pulled back as if struck. "You what?" "I've been gone for days, James," she said. "While you were busy criticizing my hair, my dress, my life, I was building a new one." His face turned red, then pale. "You're serious? You're just going to walk away after everything I've done for you?" Rachel tilted her head. "What exactly have you done for me, James? Made me smaller? Criticized my career? Belittled my accomplishments? You said I'd never be good enough for someone like you, and now I realize I'm better." "You ungrateful," he started, but she cut him off. "No, you don't get to call me that. You don't get to rewrite this." He reached for another angle. "You're nothing without me. Who do you think made you who you are?" Her smile was faint but unwavering. "That's exactly the problem, James. You actually believe that." He opened his mouth to respond, but a voice interrupted them. "Is everything all right here?" They turned. It was one of the senior partners, standing nearby with a furrowed brow. "Fine," James said quickly, his tone shifting into false politeness. "Just, did it?" "Actually," Rachel said, standing. "I was just leaving. Early morning at the new office." The partner nodded slowly, his eyes not leaving James. "Understood. Rachel, it was a pleasure meeting you. Congratulations again on your promotion." Rachel smiled graciously. "Thank you. It means a lot." She turned to James one last time. "You only feel big when you make others feel small. I'm done playing that part for you." "You're making a mistake," he hissed. "You'll regret this." She shook her head. "The only thing I regret is waiting this long to realize you weren't lifting me." He reached for her hand, a pitiful echo of the man who once claimed to love her. "Please, let's talk about this at home." "There is no home, James. Just a house I once lived in with someone who mistook control for love." James's eyes flicked to the partner, who was still watching, arms crossed. A few others at nearby tables were clearly listening, pretending not to. Rachel didn't care. She'd spent too long caring. She turned toward the door, her heels echoing confidently as she walked away. Behind her, she heard the partner say quietly, "James, we'll be having a conversation on Monday. About everything." She didn't look back. She didn't have to. She stepped into the night, the city buzzing around her, her phone lighting up with a text from Sarah. "We're at the bar. Come celebrate?" Rachel smiled, not because she had hurt James, but because she had finally stopped hurting herself to make him comfortable. She was free, finally, undeniably free. The aftermath of that dinner rolled through their social circle like a thunderclap. Word spread quickly. Colleagues whispered about James's behavior, about the way he grabbed Rachel's arm, the way his composure cracked when she calmly announced her promotion. The polished facade he had spent years constructing crumbled in a single evening under the weight of the truth he had worked so hard to suppress. The partners at his firm noticed. So did their wives, who had once been distant with Rachel, often mistaking her quietness for indifference. Now they saw her differently, not as the meek woman James painted her to be, but as someone who had been surviving in silence for far too long. One by one, the women reached out. Some sent messages of support, others shared stories, of dinners where James had made cutting remarks about Rachel's lack of sophistication, of times he had monopolized conversation to elevate himself at her expense. One woman confessed, "We thought she was just shy. Now I realize he worked hard to dim her light." Those who once mirrored James's dismissiveness toward Rachel now became her quiet allies. Meanwhile, James's professional world shook. After multiple internal complaints and his public unraveling, the firm placed him on probation. A partner who'd been at the dinner pulled him aside the following Monday and laid out the consequences. Behavior like that wouldn't be ignored anymore. Rachel, on the other hand, was thriving. Her new role at Maxwell & Brooks gave her not only purpose, but joy. She walked into her corner office every morning, surrounded by a team that respected her. She filled the space with bold artwork, fresh flowers, and framed photos of herself with friends who reminded her of her worth. Her apartment, vibrant and filled with color, became a sanctuary furnished with pieces James would have scoffed at. Where once she had tiptoed through life, now she danced. She started cooking again, but this time for fun, not to win approval. She took up photography, capturing city scenes and smiling faces, and signed up for a weekend hiking group. With Sarah, she explored local art galleries, wine tastings, and music festivals. Her laugh, once stifled, came freely now. The woman James had tried to contain was gone, and in her place was someone confident, vibrant, and unbothered. The divorce finalized swiftly thanks to her preparation. James, however, didn't go quietly. He sent long, rambling emails, sometimes pleading, sometimes threatening. "You're ruining everything," he wrote. "Everyone sees how you've changed. You're not the sweet, modest woman I married." She forwarded every message to her lawyer without a second thought. Let the paper trail tell its own story. Then came the call from his mother. "Rachel, I just think maybe you're being a bit dramatic," she said, her voice low and condescending. "James tells me you've become difficult. You're just trying to help you be your best self. Maybe you're overreacting." Rachel took a breath, calm and steady. "No, he was trying to break me down. There's a difference, and I'm done with anyone who thinks control equals care." "Well, he's hurting too, you know." "I'm sure he is. Consequences tend to sting." The call ended shortly after that, and Rachel blocked the number. Her circle was smaller now, but infinitely stronger. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had to explain, apologize, or shrink to fit someone else's version of who she should be. Rachel wasn't just surviving, she was rising into what In the month that followed, Rachel stepped into a life she had once only dared to imagine. At Maxwell & Brooks, her first marketing campaign shattered expectations, generating a surge in engagement and client acquisition the firm hadn't seen in years. Her strategic insights and natural leadership quickly earned her not just admiration, but a seat on the executive board. Sitting at that long, polished table among top decision-makers, she no longer questioned her place. She had earned every inch of it, and she never again let anyone make her feel otherwise. With her professional life thriving, Rachel turned her attention to lifting others. She began mentoring young women navigating controlling relationships, offering the kind of support she once wished she'd had. She gave talks at local women's centers and led workshops on self-worth and financial independence. Her inbox filled with thank you notes from women who saw themselves in her story and were inspired to rewrite their own. At home, her apartment was a canvas of bold colors and unapologetic joy. No more muted palettes or minimalist decor meant to impress someone else. She filled the walls with bright artwork, laughter-filled photos with Sarah and her new circle of friends, and furniture chosen for comfort and character, not conformity. She even framed a print of the red dress, a symbol of the day her transformation became undeniable. Rachel laughed more now, not polite chuckles meant to smooth over James's jabs, but real, full-bodied laughter that echoed through her space. She took up salsa dancing with Sarah, joined a weekend hiking group, and started hosting spontaneous dinner parties where the only rule was, bring your full self. For the first time in years, she felt completely alive. Her relationship with Sarah grew deeper too, rooted in mutual support, honesty, and shared memories. They traveled together, explored local vineyards, and made a pact to never again shrink for anyone. Rachel's other friends, once lost to James's disapproval, slowly returned to her life. They came back not to rescue her, but to celebrate her. Every insult James had once thrown at her became fuel for her fire. "You'll never be good enough" had turned into, "Watch me succeed on my own." "You're not leadership material" had morphed into boardroom victories and industry accolades. "Tone it down" had become speaking engagements, campaign launches, and bold choices that echoed her true voice. And that voice, once silenced under the weight of someone else's expectations, now carried weight of its own. People listened when Rachel spoke, not because she shouted, but because she no longer needed anyone's approval to speak up. Her power wasn't loud. It was steady, undeniable, and built from within. Rachel had once thought escape meant losing everything, but in reality, leaving James hadn't taken anything away. It had returned her to herself. What started as survival had blossomed into full reinvention. She didn't just rebuild her life, she redesigned it. And it was everything he said she couldn't have. A year after that unforgettable dinner, Rachel returned to the firm's annual gala, but this time not as James's quiet wife. She arrived as a respected executive, a guest of honor representing Maxwell and Brooks. She wore red again. James wasn't there. After probation and a quiet departure, he'd taken a position at a smaller firm. Through mutual contacts, Rachel had heard he was still trying to reinvent his narrative, but his influence had faded. That night, several of the partners' wives approached her Binwaga, not with polite smiles, but with real apologies. They admitted they'd seen glimpses of how James treated her, and regretted not speaking up sooner. Rachel didn't hold grudges. She'd long since stopped letting silence define her worth. Standing near the balcony, overlooking the glittering city skyline, Rachel thought about everything James had once told her. "You'll never be good enough." For so long, she'd tried to prove him wrong. Now she knew better. He'd been right in one way. She was never good enough for him, because she had always been meant for better. And for anyone still trying to decide if their relationship is love or control, she offers this. Someone who truly wants to help you be better will never start by telling you that you're not enough. Real love doesn't demand you shrink. It helps you grow and shine